Nobody screamed when a human walked into the Gentle Flame restaurant. Bloom considered this a victory. The Florian owner had spent 3 sleepless cycles preparing his staff for this moment. He had read every safety guide. He had installed emergency barriers. He had even purchased a sedation kit, just in case. Now the human stood in his doorway, and he looked ordinary. "Hi there," the human said with a small wave. "I am Denny Vep, here for the cooking job." Bloom's leaves rustled with nervous energy. The human was shorter than he expected, softer looking. He carried a simple bag over one shoulder and wore clothes that seemed designed for comfort rather than survival. This was a deathworlder? "Yes, yes, please come in," Bloom said, his voice higher than intended. "Welcome to the Gentle Flame. We serve gentle food for gentle species." Danny nodded and looked around the kitchen. His eyes moved slowly, taking in the 4-armed cooking stations, the temperature-controlled zones, and the complete lack of open flames. "Nice place," Danny said. "Very clean." Pip, the small insectoid server, watched from behind a counter. Her antennae twitched with curiosity. She had never seen a human before. The Galactic Network showed them as massive warriors covered in scars. This one had soft skin and smiled easily. "The kitchen may need some adjustments for your biology," Bloom said carefully. "Humans require different tools, yes?" Danny shrugged. "I can work with anything. What ingredients do you have?" For the next hour, Danny asked simple questions. What vegetables grew on the station? What proteins were available? What spices did different species enjoy? He tasted small samples of everything, making notes on a little pad. Bloom watched in fascination. The human showed no signs of violence, no sudden movements, no predatory behavior. He simply cooked. By midday, Danny had prepared a test dish. A simple soup made from station-grown fungi and imported grains. He offered the first taste to Bloom. "It's mild," Danny promised. "Nothing dangerous." Bloom sipped carefully. The flavor was warm and smooth. Nothing burned. Nothing attacked his senses. "This is acceptable," Bloom said with surprise. Danny smiled. "Good. I learned to cook gentle food early. Not every world has strong flavors." Pip hopped closer, her wings buzzing. "What worlds have you cooked on?" Danny wept. It was an innocent question. Simple curiosity from a young insectoid who had never left the station. Danny stirred his soup and thought for a moment. "Well, I moved around a lot when I was young. My father worked in terraforming. First place I remember was Carrion 4. Learned to filter ingredients there because of the toxic air. Then we moved to Vindris when I was about 6. The kitchen went silent. Bloom's leaves had frozen mid-rustle. Pip's antennae pointed straight up. Even the ventilation system seemed to pause. "Carrion 4, Bloom repeated slowly. "The poison world." "Yeah, the atmosphere was pretty rough," Danny agreed. "You had to be careful about what you brought inside. But the underground gardens grew amazing mushrooms." "In Vindris," Pip whispered. "The volcano planet." Danny nodded casually. "Hot place. Lots of geothermal cooking. You could boil water just by setting it on the right rocks. Made meal prep pretty easy, actually." He turned back to his soup, completely unaware of the horror spreading through the kitchen. Bloom had read about these worlds. Every species in the galaxy knew about them. Carrion 4 was listed as a Class 7 death zone. Vindris was Class 8. No civilized species would set foot on either world. And this human had lived on both. As a child, "Where do you keep the salt?" Danny asked. Nobody answered. Pip had backed away slowly. Bloom stood frozen, his mind trying to process what he had just heard. Danny looked up from his cooking. "Everything okay? Did I say something wrong?" You lived on Carrion 4 and Vindris," Bloom managed to say. "You survived them." "Sure," Danny said with a confused look. "Lots of humans did. They were terraforming colonies. Pretty standard postings for engineers." "Standard?" He called Deathworlds standard. Bloom excused himself to the back room. He needed a moment, perhaps several moments. He pulled up his data screen and searched for human colony records. What he found made his leaves wilt. Humans had settlements on 47 classified death worlds. They sent their families there. They raised children there. They built schools and hospitals and restaurants on planets that would kill any other species within hours, and they considered it normal. Back in the kitchen, Danny finished his soup. He divided it into small bowls and set them out for the staff. Pip approached hers carefully, as if it might explode. "Try it," Danny encouraged. "I promise it's safe. I learned to cook for sensitive stomachs. My sister had allergies as a kid." Pip tasted the soup. It was delicious, warm and comforting and perfectly mild. She looked at the human who had survived poison and fire before he was 10 years old. He stood there smiling, wearing a clean apron, offering gentle food to gentle species. "Danny Webb," Pip said quietly. "What other worlds have you lived on?" Danny thought about it. "A few more. Maybe we could talk about it later. Right now, I want to learn the dinner menu." He went back to cooking, humming a small tune. Pip stared at her soup. Somewhere in that simple bowl was the care of a creature forged on Deathworlds. She had never tasted anything so frightening or so wonderful in her entire life. The Gentle Flame had just become the most dangerous restaurant on the station, and nobody had even noticed. 2 weeks changed everything at the Gentle Flame. The restaurant that once served 12 customers per cycle now had a waiting list. Word had spread across Harmony Ring Station like fire through dry grass. A human worked there, a real, living Deathworlder who cooked food you could actually eat. Curious aliens came from every section of the station. They ordered small dishes and watched Danny work through the kitchen window. Some took pictures. Others simply stared with a mixture of fear and fascination. Danny noticed none of it. He was too busy perfecting his mushroom sauce. Bloom had stopped flinching every time Danny reached for a knife. Progress came slowly, but it came. The human had proven himself gentle and patient. He never raised his voice. He never made sudden movements. He cooked beautiful food and cleaned his station without being asked. The only strange thing was his complete unawareness of how terrifying his past sounded. Rillo discovered this on a quiet afternoon. The large amphibian had become a regular customer over the past week. He sat at the counter closest to the kitchen, his bulbous eyes fixed on Danny's every movement. Today, he finally gathered the courage to speak. "Human Danny," Rillo said in his deep, wet voice. "I'm curious about your cooking methods. They seem unusual." Danny looked up with a friendly expression. "Oh, sure. What do you want to know?" "Your techniques. They're not standard galactic recipes. Where did you learn them?" Danny wiped his hands on his apron. "Pick them up here and there. Every world has different resources, you know. You learn to adapt." Rillo leaned forward. "Which worlds taught you the most?" This was the question everyone wanted to ask. Pip had warned the customers about the first 2 death worlds. Now rumors spread about what other nightmares the human might reveal. Danny thought carefully. "Well, after Vendrus, we moved to Kessler's Fall." "That was interesting." Rillo's gills fluttered. "Kessler's Fall, the asteroid bombardment zone." "Yeah, the sky was pretty active," Danny admitted. "Rocks falling all the time. We lived in deep bunkers mostly, but the mineral content made amazing seasoning. I still use some of those techniques." A glass shattered somewhere in the restaurant. A customer had dropped it. Danny continued without pause. "After that was Grimhold. Now that place taught me real cooking skills." "Grimhold," Rillo whispered. "The predator planet. The world where everything hunted everything else. Had to learn to cook fast there," Danny explained. "The smell of food attracted things. Big things. So we developed quick recipes. In and out of the kitchen before anything came sniffing around." Rillo sat very still. His meal sat forgotten before him. The front door opened, and a crystalline figure entered. Counselor Thresh, the station administrator, walked with the careful precision of someone who had never experienced physical danger in his entire existence. "I'm looking for the human designated Danny Webb," Thresh announced. Danny raised his hand. "That's me. Can I help you?" Thresh approached the counter. His faceted eyes reflected Danny's image 100 times over. "I have received complaints about a Deathworlder working in food service," Thresh said. "There are concerns about safety protocols." Bloom rushed forward. "Counselor, please. Danny has all proper certifications. He has passed every health inspection." Thresh ignored the Florian. His attention remained fixed on Danny. "I require your residential history for station records," Thresh said. "Previous addresses and duration of stay." Danny nodded. "Sure, no problem." He began listing worlds. Carrion 4, 3 years. Vendrus, 2 years. Kessler's Fall, for years. Grimold, 3 years. Thresh crystalline body began to vibrate. A stress response. Your file indicates 8 total planetary residences, Thresh said, his voice higher now. Please continue. Danny scratched his head. Well, after Grimhold came Nethersteep, Gravity Planet, then Scorch. That was the radiation desert. Every customer in the restaurant had stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped breathing. My father was a terraforming engineer, Danny added helpfully. We went wherever the work was. Pretty normal for colony families. Normal, Thresh repeated. The word seemed to break something in his mind. 6 Deathworlds. This human had survived 6 Deathworlds before whatever came next, and he called it normal. The list is incomplete, Thresh managed to say. What were the final 2 worlds? Danny smiled. Oh, those are the easy ones. A nomad ship called the Wandering, and then Earth. That's where I did my cooking school. Thresh stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the restaurant. He forgot to file his complaint. He forgot to collect his records. He simply left. Rillo finally found his voice. Earth. The original Death World. Danny looked confused. Is that what you guys call it? I mean, it can get rough sometimes. Hurricanes and earthquakes and stuff. But it's home, you know. Home. He called the most dangerous planet in known space home. Bloom collapsed into a chair. His leaves had turned pale. Pip brought him water and fanned him with her wings. Danny looked around at the stunned faces. Something finally clicked. Oh, he said softly. I keep forgetting how this sounds to you guys. He returned to his cooking station and began preparing the evening specials. Behind him, the restaurant slowly returned to life. Customers whispered. Staff exchanged nervous glances, and Danny hummed a little tune while he sliced vegetables, completely unaware that he had just described the most terrifying childhood in galactic history. The soup was delicious that night. Nobody could quite enjoy it. The restaurant fell quiet after the last customer left. Pip stayed behind to help clean. She liked these late hours when the kitchen belonged only to the staff. Danny moved through his closing routine with practiced ease, wiping counters and storing ingredients. Bloom counted the day's earnings in the back room. The numbers had tripled since Danny arrived. Fear sold well, apparently. Customers paid premium prices to eat food prepared by Death World hands. Pip watched Danny work. The question had been building inside her for days. She could not hold it any longer. Danny Webb, she said, may I ask you something personal? Danny looked up. Sure, Pip. What's on your mind? How did you survive? The question hung in the air between them. Simple words carrying impossible weight. Danny stopped wiping the counter. He thought about it seriously, which Pip appreciated. You mean the Death Worlds? Danny said. Yes. You were a child. Children are fragile. How did you live through places that kill grown warriors? Danny leaned against the counter. His eyes went distant, traveling back through years and worlds. Nether's Deep was the hardest, he said finally. I was 10 when we arrived. The gravity, there's almost twice Earth normal. My legs gave out on the first day. Pip's wings folded tight against her body. She had not expected him to answer so honestly. My mother taught me to walk again, Danny continued. Every day, she would help me practice. 1 step, then rest. 2 steps, then rest. It took 3 months before I could walk across a room. Your mother sounds strong. She was the strongest person I ever knew. Danny returned to his cleaning, but his movements had slowed. Something heavier than memory weighed on him. After Nether's Deep, we moved to Scorch, the radiation desert planet. No sunlight safe for skin. We lived underground, cooked using heat from the planet's core. Pip hopped closer. That sounds frightening. It wasn't so bad once you learn the rules. Stay underground during the day. Wear protection if you go up. Check your equipment twice, always twice. Danny paused. His hands stopped moving entirely. My mother died on Scorch. Equipment failure during a surface run. Her suit lost seal. She was gone before help arrived. The kitchen became very still. Pip did not know what to say. In her culture, death was discussed in formal ceremonies with proper rituals. Humans apparently discussed it while cleaning dishes. I was 12, Danny said. My sister was 9. My father had to keep working to support us. So I learned to cook. Someone had to feed the family. Bloom had appeared in the doorway. He stood frozen, listening. His leaves trembled slightly. I made terrible food at first, Danny admitted with a small laugh. Burned everything. Used too much salt. But my sister ate it anyway. She said it tasted like love. He picked up his cleaning cloth again. After that, cooking became my thing. Every new world, every new ingredient, I learned to make something good from it. Something that would make people feel safe and warm. Bloom stepped forward. You cooked for your family on Scorch, on a radiation world. As a child, someone had to, Danny said simply. The Florian's perspective shifted in that moment. He had spent weeks seeing Danny as a terrifying predator from impossible worlds. Now he saw something different. A 12-year-old boy making dinner for his grieving father and scared sister in a kitchen that would kill most species. Danny, Bloom said softly. Would you teach me? Danny looked surprised. Teach you what? How to cook like that. How to make food that carries love even when everything else is frightening. Danny's expression softened. He reached into his bag and pulled out a worn piece of paper. Handwritten notes covered both sides. This was my mother's recipe, he said. She taught me before Scorch. I have never shown it to anyone outside my family. He held it out to Bloom. The Florian took the paper with trembling leaves. The instructions were written in human script, which he could barely read. But the meaning was clear. This was a gift of trust from a creature who had lost everything and learned to build it back. It's a simple soup, Danny explained. Basic ingredients. The secret is cooking it slow and thinking about who you are feeding while you stir. Bloom looked at the recipe. Then he looked at Danny, the human who had walked through fire and poison and crushing gravity, who had buried his mother in a desert of radiation, who still smiled and made gentle food for gentle species. Tomorrow, Bloom said, we will cook it together. Danny nodded. The heaviness in his eyes lifted slightly. Pip watched this exchange in silence. She understood something important had happened. Not the trading of recipes, but the trading of pain. Bloom had lost family too. Not to Deathworlds, but to loss. Different paths to the same grief. The human and the Florian stood together in the quiet kitchen. Two beings from opposite ends of the danger spectrum, connected by the simple act of feeding others. Danny returned to cleaning. Bloom returned to counting. Pip returned to organizing the dining room. But the restaurant felt different now. Less like a business. More like a home. Outside, Harmony Ring Station continued its gentle orbit. Safe and protected and completely unaware of the grief and love being cooked in its most dangerous kitchen. The alarm screamed through every corridor of Harmony Ring. Danny stopped chopping vegetables. The sound was different from the normal station alerts. Higher pitched, more urgent, the kind of noise that meant something had gone very wrong. Around him, the restaurant erupted into chaos. Customers dropped their meals and ran for the exits. Servers crashed into each other. Screams mixed with the alarm until everything became one wall of panic. Danny stood still and listened. He had heard alarms before. Different sounds on different worlds. The low rumble of Vendra's warning about lava flows. The sharp crack of Kessler's fall announcing incoming rocks. The deep pulse of Grimhold signaling predator movement. This alarm meant impact. Something was coming from outside. Bloom rushed from the back room, his leaves shaking violently. Danny, we must evacuate. Comet fragment incoming. Danny nodded calmly. How long until impact? 20 minutes. Maybe less. 20 minutes. Danny's mind began calculating automatically. 20 minutes was enough time to panic. It was also enough time to prepare that he walked to the kitchen storage and began pulling out emergency supplies. Water containers, sealed food packages, first aid supplies that he had noticed on his second day. Danny, what are you doing? Pip called from the doorway. We need to run. Run where? Danny asked without stopping. The evacuation pods will be full. The corridors will be jammed. This building is near the station core. Strong walls. Good structure. We stay here. Bloom stared at the human. You want a shelter in the restaurant? I want to survive, Danny said. Running in panic kills more people than the actual disaster. Trust me. I know. Security Chief Hollow burst through the door. The crystalline being moved with desperate speed, his body ringing with stress. All civilians must evacuate to the outer sectors. This area will experience structural damage. Danny turned to face him. Chief, what's the impact point? Hollow paused. Nobody had asked him a practical question in the last 10 minutes of chaos. Section 7, Lower Ring. The fragment will breach the hull there. Danny processed this information. That's 3 sections away from us. The impact will cause shaking and possible power loss, but this structure should hold. Were the structural weak points nearby? Hollow's crystalline form flickered with confusion. The support beams in Corridor 12, and the power junction in Section 4. So we avoid those areas and stay central. Good. Danny continued, gathering supplies. Chief, how many people can't reach evacuation points in time? The question hit Hollow like a physical blow. He had not thought about it. In his panic to follow protocol, he had forgotten about the slow, the injured, the elderly. I don't know, Hollow admitted. Then stop running and start thinking, Danny said. His voice was calm but firm. Send your officers to gather those who can't evacuate. Bring them to central locations like this one. Focus on survival, not procedure. Hollow stood frozen for a moment. Then something shifted in his crystalline structure. He began issuing orders into his communication device. Practical orders. Helpful orders. Danny turned back to his work. Pip watched him with a mixture of fear and awe. How are you so calm? She asked. I'm not calm, Danny said. I'm terrified. But I learned a long time ago that fear doesn't help anyone. Action helps. He paused his work and looked at her directly. On the Wandering, we passed through 3 hostile systems in 2 years. Solar flares, radiation storms, debris fields. We didn't have anywhere to run. We just had to survive. My father taught me that panic is a luxury. Poor people and colony workers can't afford it. Pip's antennae drooped. The Wandering. That was your 7th world. Not a world. A ship. Home for everyone who couldn't find safety anywhere else. Danny smiled slightly. They were good people. Tough people. They taught me that you can build family anywhere if you're willing to work for it. He handed her a stack of blankets. Put these in the dining area. People will be cold after the power fluctuates. Pip took the blankets without question. She understood now. Danny wasn't being brave. He was being practiced. 8 Deathworlds had trained him for exactly this moment. Rillo appeared in the doorway, his large body blocking the light. I heard the restaurant was becoming a shelter. I came to help. Behind him, more regulars gathered. Counselor Thresh, a family of small rodent-like creatures. An elderly being on a hover chair. All of them looked to Danny with desperate hope. The human from 8 Deathworlds stood in his kitchen, wearing his apron, surrounded by frightened aliens who had never faced real danger in their entire lives. Everyone inside, Danny said. We're going to be fine. But first we prepare. He began assigning tasks. Move the tables against the walls. Store breakable items. Create a first aid station. Designate a safe area for children. The restaurant transformed from a place of panic into a place of purpose. Outside, the comet fragment continued its deadly approach. Inside, a human chef organized survival with the same calm precision he used to make soup. Harmony Ring had never faced a disaster before, but it had something better than experience now. IT had Danny Webb, and Danny Webb had survived worse. The impact shook everything. Danny braced himself against the kitchen counter as the station rocked. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, casting the restaurant in dim red shadows. Screams filled the shelter. 43 beings huddled together in what had been a dining room. Children cried. Adults whimpered. Someone was praying in a language Danny didn't recognize. Danny counted to 5 in his head. The shaking stopped. The structure held. Everyone okay? He called out. Voices answered from the darkness. Frightened, but alive. Nobody badly hurt. Danny pulled a flashlight from his emergency kit. He had placed it there on his first day, just in case. Humans always prepared for darkness. I'm going to check the corridors, he told Bloom. Keep everyone calm. I'll be back soon. Bloom's leaves had turned pale gray with stress. You can't go out there. It's not safe. That's why I'm going. Someone has to check for survivors. Danny slipped through the door before anyone could stop him. The corridor outside was damaged but passable. Ceiling panels had fallen. Pipes leaked strange fluids. The emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls that he moved quickly and quietly. Old habits from Grimhold. Make no noise. Attract no attention. Watch every shadow point 2 sections away. He found them. A young Florian child sat alone in a collapsed doorway, crying, covered in dust. No parents in sight. Danny knelt down slowly. He didn't want to frighten the child. "Hey there," he said softly. "I'm Danny. Are you hurt?" The child looked up with terrified eyes. "I can't find my family." The walls fell and they were gone. Danny examined the child carefully. No visible injuries, just fear and confusion. "I'm going to help you find them," Danny promised. "But first, I need to take you somewhere safe. Can you walk?" The child nodded. Danny lifted them gently and placed them on his shoulders. The weight was nothing compared to Nether's deep gravity. He carried the child back through the damaged corridors. Along the way, he collected 2 more survivors. An elderly amphibian with a broken leg. A small insectoid who had become trapped under debris. By the time he reached the restaurant, he had a small group following him like lost animals seeking shelter. Bloom met him at the door. "Danny, you're bleeding." Danny looked at his arm. A piece of metal had caught him somewhere along the way. He hadn't noticed. "It's nothing. Get these people inside and comfortable." He handed the Florian child to Pip. The young insectoid took the smaller being with surprising gentleness. "I don't know my family's shelter," the child whispered. "What, they're gone forever?" Pip looked to Danny. She didn't know what to say. Danny knelt beside them. "What's your name, little one?" "Sprout." "Sprout. That's a good name." Danny thought for a moment. "When I was your age, something scary happened to my family too. I thought I would never feel safe again." Sprout's eyes focused on him. "What did you do?" "I found new people to take care of. Now let them take care of me." Family isn't just who you're born with. It's who stands with you when everything falls apart. He gestured to the restaurant full of frightened beings. "See, all these people? They're scared too, but they're together. And together is safer than alone. Always." Sprout considered this with a seriousness that only children can manage. Then they nodded. "I want to help," Sprout said. Danny smiled. "Good. Go with Pip. She needs someone to help organize the blankets." Pip led the child away. Danny watched them go, then returned to his work. The emergency supplies wouldn't last forever. He needed to cook something warm that would fill stomachs and calm nerves. That he began working with whatever ingredients remained. Emergency rations mostly. Dried proteins, sealed vegetables. Not much to work with, but Danny had cooked with less on worse worlds. Rillo appeared beside him. "Can I help?" "Start heating water. We're making soup." For the next hour, they worked together. Danny directed. Rillo followed. Pip organized distribution. Bloom managed the frightened crowd. When the soup was ready, Danny served it himself. Bowl by bowl, person by person. He gave each being a moment of eye contact and a small word of encouragement. "You're doing great. The worst is over. This will warm you up." Small kindnesses. Simple gestures. Things his mother had taught him long ago. Counselor Thresh watched from a corner. He had come to the shelter as a frightened civilian, not an administrator. Now he saw the human differently. "How do you stay so calm?" Thresh asked when Danny reached him. Danny handed him a bowl. "I'm not calm. I'm just practiced. Being scared doesn't mean you stop moving. It means you have something worth protecting." Thresh looked at the soup. Then he looked at the room full of beings who had come together under human guidance. "This is what you learned on 8 Deathworlds." Thresh asked, "How to save people?" Danny thought about it. His mother making soup in an underground kitchen. His father holding the family together after loss. His sister eating burned food and calling it love. "No," he said finally. "This is what Deathworlds taught me about living. Community survives. Fear is temporary, and a hot meal can fix almost anything." He moved on to the next person. The soup continued. The shelter held. Outside, rescue teams were beginning to organize. Inside, a human chef had already saved them. 3 months passed before the gentle flame opened its doors again. Danny stood in the rebuilt kitchen, adjusting the new equipment. Everything was modern and clean and designed for safety. He missed the old stoves already. The restaurant looked different now. The walls displayed pictures from the shelter night. Dozens of beings huddled together, sharing blankets and soup. A human chef standing in the center, covered in dust and blood, smiling anyway. Someone had titled the main photograph the Deathworld Chef. Danny pretended to hate it. Today was the reopening celebration. The new menu hung proudly by the entrance. Deathworld comfort food. Recipes from 8 impossible places, adapted for gentle species. Customers have been lining up since dawn. Rillo claimed his usual spot at the counter. Counselor Thresh had reserved a table for his entire administrative staff. Security Chief Hollow stood near the door, no longer worried about safety violations. Pip buzzed around the dining room, her wings humming with excitement. She wore a new apron that Danny had given her. It said Apprentice Chef in 3 languages. Bloom watched his restaurant fill with beings who had once feared humans. Now they waited eagerly for food prepared by Deathworld hands. "You have changed things here, Danny Webb," Bloom said. Danny shrugged. "I just make soup." The front door opened, and a human woman walked inside. She was tall and weathered, with the same calm eyes as Danny. A large bag hung over her shoulder. Danny froze mid-stir. "Nell?" he whispered. The woman grinned. "Surprise, little brother." They embraced in the middle of the kitchen. Pip had never seen Danny hug anyone before. She didn't know humans could hold each other so tightly. "What are you doing here?" Danny asked when they finally separated. "Dad finished the vendor's project. We're between assignments." Nell looked around the restaurant with approval. "Nice place. I heard you became famous." "Not famous, just a cook. A cook who saved 43 people during a comet impact." Nell punched his shoulder lightly. "That's very on-brand for you." Danny returned to his cooking, but his movements were lighter now. Having family nearby changed something in him. Nell grabbed an apron from Hook. "Put me to work. I didn't travel 3 systems to watch you stir." They cooked together the way they had on Scorch, the way they had on the Wandering, the way they had learned from their mother before she died. Bloom watched the siblings move around each other with perfect coordination. 2 humans raised on death worlds, now making gentle food together. "Your sister is also from the 8 worlds?" Bloom asked during a quiet moment. Nell laughed. 9 worlds now. I just finished a project on Hollow's Edge. Nice place if you don't mind the acid rain. 9 death worlds. This family collected them like souvenirs. Rillo leaned toward Pip. "Are all humans like this?" Apparently Danny was the soft one in the family, Pip answered. She had overheard conversations. The evening rush began. Danny and Nell worked side by side, producing dish after dish. The new menu was a massive success. Beings who had never tasted human cooking discovered something unexpected: comfort. During a brief lull, Nell pulled Danny aside. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was different now, softer. "Dad passed away last month, on his 9th world." Danny went still. The spatula in his hand stopped moving. "How?" he asked quietly. "Equipment failure. Same as Mom." Nell's eyes were wet but steady. "He went fast. No pain." Danny stood in silence for a long moment. Around them, the restaurant continued its cheerful noise. Happy customers, busy servers, normal life continuing while grief arrived unannounced. "He always said 9 would be his limit," Danny finally said. "He said a lot of things." Nell wiped her eyes with her apron. "He also said you make the best soup in the galaxy. He bragged about you to everyone on the project." Danny turned back to his cooking station. He pulled out ingredients with quiet precision. His mother's recipe, the one he had shared with Bloom. "Help me make this," he said to his sister. They worked together in silence. The soup came together slowly, carefully, filled with memories of a man who had walked through fire and poison and crushing gravity just to give his children a chance at life. When it was ready, Danny carried it to the dining room himself. "Tonight's special," he announced. "My father's favorite. On the house for everyone." The restaurant fell quiet as Danny served each table personally. He told them nothing about his father's death. He simply offered food and warmth and connection. Bloom tasted the soup. It was different from anything Danny had made before. Deeper, more complex, filled with something that couldn't be named. "This is grief," Bloom whispered to Pip. "This is how humans cook grief." At the counter, Rillo took his first bite and felt tears forming in his eyes. He had no idea why. When the last bowl was served, Danny stood with his sister in the center of their father's legacy. A restaurant on a safe station, run by children of Deathworlds, serving comfort to gentle species that a customer raised her glass. To the chef, others joined. To Danny Webb, Danny smiled his usual modest smile. Nell squeezed his hand. "How do humans make death taste like home?" someone asked. Danny looked at his sister. "At his restaurant, at the family he had built from strangers and survivors." "Practice," he said. "Lots of practice." And the soup was perfect,